idea for the show.
I still don't know what the idea is.
It's about nothing.
Right.
Everybody's doing something. We'll do nothing.
They say, what's your show about? I say nothing.
There you go.
I think you may have something here.
Cross Coast Bias presents the League About Nothing podcast.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We have our Week 9 recap show for you. Pretty awful week in the NFL. We had our lowest scoring median score of the season with a 179.63. It's our lowest since Week 1, which was a 182.11. What an awful display of football this weekend.
Agreed.
Not a whole heck of a lot going on in the way of exciting football stuff, but we had some excitement in the league. We had a few trades go down this week. Let's jump into the trades first.
Were any of those trades actually exciting? I don't know if these trades qualify as exciting.
You know,
maybe one of them.
We're gonna find out. We're gonna start with your trade. The most pieces moved in this trade. You made a trade with Flea last week, the day we were recording, actually, or the day I recorded, I should say, on Tuesday.
Day that I ghost recorded.
Yes. You traded away Jaylen Warren and Raheed Shaheed, and you got back DJ Chark, a 2024 second-round pick tied to Big's team, a 2024 third-round pick tied to Flinch's team, and a 2024 fourth-round pick tied to Flea's team. Tell us about this trade.
This is kind of where I valued these guys, so it seemed like a fair trade to me, even though it probably hurts my depth and helps one of my competitors' lineups. I'm probably not done dealing. There's a good chance that I'm going to flip these picks themselves for more players later on. You know what I always say, picks are liquid, and players are not. So if it's an even value, I'm generally going to lean the picks because then I know it's an active league and I can flip the picks later on for different players.
It does sort of surprise me to see you trade someone like Shaheed, who has had some pretty big boom weeks in your lineup, away at this point of the season in what is a tight playoff race.
Yeah, but again, I roughly valued him at about a second round pick, which is probably a lot higher than he was valued when I originally traded for him earlier in the year.
Yep.
You
bought low and sold high.
He's continued his streakiness in a good way this year, even with Michael Thomas back, surprisingly. He's been productive, especially in a best ball, where you don't have to guess when to start him, right? I just stick him on my bench, and when he catches a long touchdown, he gets in the lineup. But I'm not sure how much higher his ceiling really is. You know, I don't think he's ever going to be the Saints wide receiver one or get some kind of huge target share. So I don't mind cashing out at what I think is a fair price. Like I said already, the picks are liquid. I can use those for anything else. There's only so many teams that are going to be interested in Shaheed. He only fits so many rosters, but a second round pick, I mean, pretty much anyone will take that. So
yeah,
gives me more flexibility for a future trade.
So I took a quick look. I had an inkling that I'd seen you trade for DJ Chark before.
Oh, yeah, it's not the first time.
This is the third trade of yours involving him. You acquired him from Rugg, you traded him to Flea, and then you just got him back from Flea. So he's been in and out of your lineup a few times now.
Yeah, welcome home. Welcome home, DJ Chark. That was part of the deal too. The fact that I could get another receiver back. DJ Chark is very boom bust as well. Just it's been a lot more bust than boom recently. But he's another guy that he's out there. He's on the field. He's playing a good amount of snaps. He's always been a good deep threat. So there's a chance that he spikes a couple of weeks in my lineup over the course of the year. And anything I get out of him is basically just a bonus at this point because I already got the value with the pick for Shaheed.
That's it from your side. Looking at it for Flea, this is a smart move. She's gone all in on this season. She just made the big trade a couple weeks ago. And now she adds Shaheed, who, like we said, gives those big boom weeks. He's going to pop off at least a few more times before the end of the season, and he'll be guaranteed to be in the lineup. Warren, he's clearly a good player. So adding those depth pieces for her, just shoring up the lines a little bit more.
Yeah, she's done a great job all offseason, throughout the season, just lengthening the bench, just adding players, useful players who can contribute every week. And she's done it over and over. And that's the reason her team has had such a quick turnaround. She in a best ball of this size with this many starting roster spots and this big of a bench, you need as many contributors as you can get, however you can get them. You just keep adding, just keep adding, just keep adding. And you're going to have more good weeks than bad weeks. If you have 30 guys on your team that can contribute every week, you don't need them all to pop off.
And that's how you said, like, Shaheed doesn't fit every team, but he fits our team.
Yep, he'll help replace some of that Kendrick Bourne production, at least a few weeks here and there.
All right, so let's move on to the next trade that took place. It was between me and Mr. Good News. This one's pretty straightforward. Mr. Good News acquired Taylor Heineke. I reacquired Kirk Cousins.
Speaking of welcome home.
Yeah, right. Was not
that didn't last long.
It was a brief fling for Kirk. For Kirk and Mr. Good News, I should say. It's pretty simple. Mr. Good News is competing. He needs his quarterbacks. That's why he acquired Cousins in the first place. That's the deal that I got Heineke in, as a matter of fact. I figured that at some point Heineke would basically have to take over that Atlanta job if Ritter kept turning the ball over at the rate he was, and he did continue that, and they did make the switch. Cousins goes down. Mr. Good News needs a quarterback. Suddenly I have another starter. It was pretty simple. It was your idea, in fact. I shouldn't say it was your idea. It was one that as soon as it happened, I said, I should probably just make this offer. You said, why don't you make that offer? And then I didn't for a week. And then you finally said, why didn't you make that offer? And then I made it, and here we are. Yeah,
like you said, this is a very straightforward trade. That's why I was encouraging you to make the offer. It just made too much sense. You needed a starting quarterback, and he doesn't have any draft picks or young, exciting, non-producing players that he's holding that he can flip. He doesn't have a ton of liquid value in his team. It's mostly running backs. He's built to win now. So unfortunately, his hand was kind of forced here. The only thing he could really do was trade Cousins to somebody who doesn't care about this year, like you, and try to get a starting quarterback that he can use at least for this year. That was it. That was the trade. It's really a no-brainer from both sides. Makes sense for your side to take Cousins, who's probably got a better chance of being a starting quarterback next year versus Taylor Heineke, even coming off the Achilles.
Yeah.
And for him, he needs the points now. He needs the production now.
Yeah, I mean, the reason for me was basically what you just said. Next season, even if Taylor Heineke does a decent job for the rest of the season, I still think Cousins is more likely to have a legit starting gig and actually be able to return some kind of value.
We know what Taylor Heineke is. He's a stopgap option. He's always been like that. He can give you a spark for a little bit, but he plays like a backup. He's a 4A player. He's definitely a quad A player, like they say in baseball. He's basically Gardner Minshew, right? He makes a lot of questionable decisions. Sometimes he gets away with them and sparks your team, and sometimes he throws 4 interceptions and causes you to lose. We'll see how long he can hold on to the Falcons starting quarterback spot. But it's not like Ritter was doing anything. We've been speculating all year, waiting for him to get the rug pulled out from under him. He'd been committing the turnovers, except without the spark plays. So really can't have that.
So hopefully for the rest of the year, Heineke produces at least enough to keep Mr. Good News afloat. All right, let's move on.
Please.
All right, you say please, but once you hear the next trade, you might not be so eager. The next one was also involving me, and this one involved the Commissioner Mel Crisp, and it was a trade of Mel acquiring Noah Brown, and I acquired Melvin Gordon and a 2024 fifth round pick tied to Flea's roster. This is pretty simple. I am tanking. Noah Brown is scoring points. He is 27. I'm not going to be competitive for at least 2 years. Mel offered a late round pick. That's the end of the story. It's the end of the analysis.
Unfortunately, he traded for him after his career week. But I tell you, that Texans offense looks pretty good.
CJ Stroud,
that was
number one scoring quarterback in the week.
That was one of the reasons in the offseason I traded for Robert Woods. And we talked about Mechie versus Woods versus Tank Dell versus Noah Brown versus Collins. We said, you know what? This passing offense might be better than what we think going into the year.
Yeah.
And if it is, one of these guys that nobody wants is going to be worth something.
Yep.
You know, and they've all had weeks. They've all popped off. Collins has had some spike weeks. Robert Woods had some spike weeks.
Yeah.
Tank Dell has had pretty much spike week every week he's been healthy.
Yep.
And now Noah Brown had a spike week.
Outside of Collins and Dell, there hasn't been much consistency to it, but there's definitely been those big weeks.
Whatever 3 guys are healthy for that week have pretty much been productive for them. It hasn't been the same 3 guys every week, but the guys that are out there and playing are playing heavy snaps and they're throwing a lot, mostly because they can't run at all. But CJ Stroud has been up to the task.
That's the thing with Brown. He sees the field because he's a really good blocker. So he's just going to be out there running routes.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much he plays when Robert Woods is back. Because Robert Woods is also a very
really
good blocker.
Yeah, it's fair.
I mean, who are you going to take
calling
off
card.
the field? I assume that Tank Dell will see reduced snaps, but it's hard to take him off the field. He's so explosive and
He's been
productive.
so good, yeah.
Like,
Well,
who do you take off the field? I don't know. That's a good problem to have, I guess, for the Texans.
Yeah, I imagine they probably rotate packages more where they get Dell out there for more of the actual passing plays. And, you know, they don't want to tip their hand too much, but they'll probably try and at least get the bigger guys out there blocking for the run plays.
Yeah, a lot of teams have specific receivers for 11 personnel, 12 personnel, 13 personnel. We'll probably see something similar to that.
Whenever you're ready to trade for Melvin Gordon again, you just let me know.
Check his player history. How many times have I traded for Melvin Gordon?
I'm not checking that. I refuse.
One time is too many. Trust me.
So we'll keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, as soon as he gets back on an active roster, I'll come calling, I'm sure.
Sounds like a plan. May that day never come. Our last trade took place earlier today, actually, as we were recording on Tuesday. Another one involving Mel, this one between Mel and Benign Rug. Mel acquires a 2024 fifth-round pick attached to Criddle's roster, and Rug acquired Mitch Trubisky, DJ Dallas, and a 2024 fifth-round pick attached to Mel's roster. Now, Mel is moved up all the way into second place in the league right now, so he's looking very much like a playoff team, and Criddle is looking very likely to be the 4th overall pick, so we'd imagine this would be a pick at 504 for what's, you know, going to be a pick likely in the 510 to 512 range. So Mel has moved up in the 5th round and cleared some roster space.
That's it 100%. These are my favorite kind of trades. I do these all the time.
You're a sick man.
Trade a 5th for a slightly better 5th. Get rid of some roster clogger guys, make some room. He probably has some guys coming off IR that he needs to clear space for, or maybe there's some exciting players on waivers that he wants to pick up. Either way.
Have you seen our waiver wire? There are no exciting players. Tommy DeVito.
Hey, Tommy DeVito, and I bet Jack Stahl picks up some heavy bidding this week with Dallas Goedert out and the amount of Eagles fans that are in our league.
That's probably true.
I mean, last year he filled in for the injured Goddard, and I think he almost made it to double digits one time.
Oh God!
Not expecting a
please.
Not expecting a lot. He's a pretty good blocker, but I'm guessing we're going to see a lot more Devonta Smith. But we can cover that more when we get into the injuries.
Yeah, Smith last year had his best weeks when Dallas Goedert was out, so I assume that's what they go to for the rest of this year.
I mean, it's fine for Rugg to pick up a couple of extra pieces that could potentially come into value at some point this year.
Yeah.
Especially Mitch Trubisky. Kyle Pickett's been banged up more than once this year. He's been at risk of missing games several times that he's managed to play through.
Yeah. And
potential that he could get some spot starts from Mitch Trubisky and flip him for another pick.
Yeah. And
worth a gamble for him. He doesn't care about the zeros at this point, right?
Yeah. And if Pickett goes down at the wrong time or the right time or however you'd look at it, he could probably flip Trubisky for a 5th. So like he would just get an additional 5th round pick for free, essentially.
Yep. When you're rebuilding, you have the luxury of taking on these types of players that are going to score 0 until they eventually potentially come into value. And when they do, you flip them. You got nothing else to do with those roster spots. Might as well take some flyers.
Yeah.
Backup quarterbacks are about as high upside flyer as you can get.
Now, to let everyone behind the curtain for a second, I did have some trade talks with Mel this week, as you would imagine, because I made a trade with Mel this week, and Mitch Trubisky did come up in those trades, and they were involving a 5th-round pick. I was not interested in Mitch Trubisky in those trades. I have a hard
opportunity.
Yeah, no, I am comfortable with missing that opportunity.
Well, the thing about Mitch Trubisky is, even when he gets chances to play, he's not very good. So he's limited upside here.
It's one of those where I looked at it and I was like, even if Kenny Pickett gets hit by a bus tomorrow, I don't think I want Trubisky on my roster.
Yeah, it's a very limited ceiling. But he would be a starting quarterback at that point, so that has some value.
Every starting quarterback has some value.
Well, we're going to put that to the test this week with Tommy DeVito.
Oh, God.
Because last week was Mark Rippon, and that didn't work out too well.
I'm going all in.
He's already off my team.
I'm full sending. How much fab do I have left? 85. Tommy DeVito, here I come.
This is a bad time for you to be a Giants homer.
Oh, God, it's awful. I don't want to talk about it. We'll see what happens next year. Same as with my team. All right. So that brings us to the end of the trades. We can cover the waivers really, really quickly here. Flea bid $7 on Jamison Crowder. Mel bid $3 on Mitch Trubisky. You bid $9 on Brett Rippon.
All of them were a waste of fab.
That's about the end of that. Yeah, no, nothing of use from any of these players. Trubisky already gone from Mel's roster. We've seen him do this before, where he picks up a guy and then immediately tries to flip him. It's one of his favorite pastimes. And you've already churned Rippon. Maybe Crowder has a game or two for Flea down the line.
Crowder was the only one that did really
anything
productive, and it wasn't nearly as productive as last week. He played a good amount of snaps, but yeah, I mean, he's Jamison Crowder. So
we should note with Rippon, we don't know for sure when Stafford will be back, but we do know that the Rams have signed Carson Wentz now.
We do know for sure that it won't be Mark Rippon again. I think that's the end of the Mark Rippon experience.
Yeah, we can only hope.
If Stafford can't play, we're going to see Carson Wentz, for better or for worse.
Also, you said Mark Rippon twice, just to let you know that it's no longer the early 90s. We're in a much later era now.
Brett Rippon.
There you go.
I like Mark better anyway.
I think we all did.
Mark Rippon is probably better right now than Brett Rippon.
Oof. I mean, how old is Mark Rippon? Let's look this up. He is 61 years old. Last professional game was on June 10th, 2006 as part of a promotional gig for the Rochester Raiders of the Great Lakes Indoor Football League.
It's been a while.
Yeah. I didn't know he played until the 2000 era. That's a lot longer than I thought. All right. Let's move on from the waivers because, man, those were ugly. Let's take a look at the injuries across the league. Not a lot of big ones this week, if you're not a Giants fan anyways. The one really impactful one is Daniel Jones tearing an ACL. Just an awful year for Daniel Jones and the Giants as a whole. The neck injury first for him, missing, a month, and then comes back, tears his ACL. He was a gamer. He tried to give it a go after that too, but obviously tough to play with no ACL.
Yeah, just a snake-bitten year for him and for the team. The line, they haven't been able to keep anyone healthy. Barkley missed time. Waller now on IR. Yeah, it's just been basically worst-case scenario for the Giants all season. The interesting thing about that injury is what is JMC going to do at quarterback now? He's lost Rodgers for the year. He's lost Daniel Jones for the year. We've been talking about his roster through the matchups all year, how thin it is. He really can't afford to keep losing impactful players. And now he's down to only Brock Purdy at quarterback.
That's our Lord and Savior, Brock Purdy.
Right. Excuse me. He hasn't been a savior the last few weeks.
No, not the last few. 3 straight losses. Finally looking mortal. No, but you're right. It's a brutal loss for JMC. He's got to do something if he wants to compete this year. He has to either dip into those future picks or trade Daniel Jones at a discount. If he doesn't do anything, chances are he doesn't have a legitimate shot to win anymore with only one starting quarterback.
Yeah, the way the playoff race is right now, it's so tight. There's 8 teams that are fighting for these 6 playoff spots. There's 8 legitimate teams that are all within a game of first place. It's a very tight race. Any major injury like that, you can start falling behind. It's going to be over pretty quickly. He doesn't have any 24 picks to trade. He's already used those to pick up Daniel Jones in the offseason. And so far, he's been reluctant to tap into the 2025 picks, which makes sense based on the build of his team. Really, yeah, Daniel Jones himself is probably his best trade chip. If he can find a rebuilding team that has a starting quarterback, he can do the Kirk Cousins for Taylor Heineke deal. I'm not sure that he wants to do something like that, but there's not a whole lot of options. He doesn't have a lot of depth surplus to deal from.
And there are not a lot of surplus quarterbacks available. Like they just
right. Most of the rebuilding teams have already been stripped bare.
Exactly. I mean, I'm sure there are certain quarterbacks that he could acquire at a reasonable rate. Bet you Mac Jones is available.
Right. And that's the other part is most of the depth quarterbacks are now on contending teams who are competing with him for a playoff spot. May not be willing to hand the reigning champ a free quarterback to help him.
That's fair. Can't blame him for not wanting to just give away points. His options are extremely limited if he doesn't want to tap into those 2025 picks.
Yep. It's the 25 picks, or he'll have to give up another impactful starter, which doesn't really net you any positive there besides swapping the positions. If he gives up a guy like Debo or T. Higgins, then he's probably going to end up losing points on that transaction.
Exactly.
Just to fill a quarterback spot is a tough position to be in right now. That's why as a contender, it's always nice to be able to keep some picks in reserve in case things happen late in the season and you have to go out and get a player. Picks are liquid. Anyone will take picks. You can always buy stuff with picks.
He has his full complement of 2025 picks, and he has a win now team. I know he's looked ahead a lot. I know he's aware of the age of some of his players, but really, if he gets another legitimate starting option, I mean, is Saquon going to be that much worse next year? He's probably not going to be on the Giants. He's probably going to go somewhere that's actually going to use him properly. Yeah,
I think for him, it's a little bit easier to kind of throw up the white flag when you're coming off a win. He's got the next 6 to 7 years
got the title
paid for already at this point, so maybe not as pressing as the rest of us. We're still trying to win for the first time.
Outside of Kelsey, he doesn't really have those like old guys on the roster. You worried about Tyreek Hill next year? I'm not. You worried about T. Higgins next year? Obviously not. Amari Cooper, maybe a little bit, but none of these guys are like on the edge of retirement.
Yeah, he just doesn't have the depth to be a longer term force. Besides Rodgers and now Jones, he's been relatively healthy, and that's what's kept him afloat. It's possible he can go into next year and 2 of those big guys could get hurt right away, and then that's going to be it. And then he'll have no picks and no players to trade. So I understand wanting to hold something back.
Yeah, so we'll see what he does. If anything, maybe he just lets it play out without making any moves.
He's still got Purdy, and he's past his bye week, so he'll have at least one quarterback as long as Purdy stays healthy. He'll have something. Purdy's been productive pretty much every week. It's a good offense.
Yeah, it's a good
scheme.
Offense.
He's got a very high floor, so at least he won't be taking zeros. But yeah, now he'll have to dig deeper to fill that super flex spot with someone from his bench. Doesn't have a super deep bench, so it's just going to get tougher every week to stay in that playoff hunt. Losing a guy like Jones. He does have Tyrod, who will be off IR in 4 weeks. So if he can stay afloat for a couple of weeks, he will have another quarterback eventually.
Someone.
But yeah, it's not ideal, obviously.
Yeah. Other injuries this week, not a ton of big names. Another starting quarterback, Jaron Hall, went out with a concussion. Josh Dobbs came in and led the Vikings to victory in his stead.
Yeah, Jaron Hall ain't a starting quarterback anymore. That was his one shot. Unfortunately, he got knocked out, and he got Wally pipped, I think.
Yeah. I don't think they planned to start him long-term anyways. I mean, I guess if he had balled out, maybe they would have just let him play for a couple weeks. But
He looked pretty good until he got knocked out.
yeah, no, he was moving them. The offense was matriculating down the field anyways. They were going, but concussion will knock you out. And when Dobbs comes in and leads the team to victory after having been there for less than a week, I don't think he's going back in when he's healthy.
Did you see him on the sidelines with the offensive line practicing the cadence?
Getting the cadence. Yeah, that was great.
The guys could get used to what he sounds like.
Yeah, they were saying that
it's an underrated thing you don't think about. He didn't have any time with this line.
No practice at all.
Forget about learning the verbiage of the offense and all this stuff. A lot of teams run basically the same plays, just with a different terminology. So I understand you have to learn that. You have to learn how to slide protections. You have to learn how to call hot routes when you're reading blitz. But the cadence is on every play. And if you're not used to that, especially the tackles, the guys on the outside, they're trying to get a jump on the pass rushers. They have to be right on time. And every quarterback is just a little bit different.
The one that I liked that I heard was he was getting the play call in the huddle, calling the play, and then having the receivers tell him after he called the play what they were going to be doing. Because he called the play and he had no idea what he just called.
Well, he was an aerospace engineer at Tennessee, so
obviously
seems like an intelligent
guy. He could pick up anything that fast, let alone NFL quarterbacking.
Right.
One other injury in that game, KJ Osborne went down.
It was an ugly hit.
Oh, it's another concussion. That's right.
Yeah, it popped up in the chat when it happened because it was not pretty. Lucky it was only a concussion. The way he got bent around, it looked like it was going to be a lot worse than that.
Yeah, so hopefully he's okay. That one, I do remember that now that you said it. It was not pleasant.
He's been a surprisingly important part of their passing offense with Justin Jefferson out.
They said he could do everything Justin Jefferson does.
Yeah, including getting hurt, apparently.
Oof, too soon. Let's stick in that game. Unfortunately, the Vikings just having a tough go. Cam Akers, another Achilles tear.
Oh, speaking of being snake bitten.
Oh, man.
Cam Akers.
Just brutal. You feel for the guy. This is other Achilles, too, not the repaired one.
Yeah, it's just some guys' bodies are just not meant for professional football. Probably going to be the end of his career. It was already shocking that he came back from the first one. Achilles has been a career ender for most players. Now to have
how fast he came back from it at that.
Yeah, now to have a second Achilles. I mean, I don't know. I think we've probably seen the last of Cam, unfortunately.
I hope not, but I think you're probably right. A couple other injuries worth noting. Josh Downs left the game, I think second quarter with a knee injury. Did not return.
Yeah, he came in questionable with a knee, and he didn't really practice. So I was surprised he even played, and he didn't last long before he had to come out for good. We'll see how that goes. A lot of times you see stuff like that, and then they end up on IR shortly after.
Yeah. Well, speaking of ending up on IR with a knee, Josh Palmer.
Yeah, same thing. He
got put on before the game.
He was hurt, came back into the game, and didn't look real great, and couldn't practice, and tried to gut it out, and went out there and played, and just made it worse. And now he's on IR for a while. All
right. The only other injury of note was Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, that's a big one in our league. Yeah, out of all these guys that got hurt, Dallas Goedert's been the most productive one this year.
Fractured right forearm. He's going to have surgery. He's going to go on IR. I mean, you know, he's minimum 4 week for a broken bone. So I assume they're going to put him on IR. I don't think they have actually done it yet.
Yeah. I mean, the timeline for broken bones, if it's a clean fracture, it's 4 to 6 weeks, no matter what. There's no way to really speed up your bone healing.
Yeah.
That's just, he's going to miss a month and a half.
Yeah. They might be hesitant to put him on IR because they're on bye this week. And I don't know if that bye week counts towards the IR game. I don't think it does.
And they're already carrying 4 tight ends on the roster. So it's possible they don't need to IR him to clear up a spot. I mean, they don't need another tight end. They already have 3 other guys.
Yep.
After they picked up Agwebanam earlier in the offseason. We'll see him active. If it goes like last year, Jack Stoll will play a lot more snaps, but he's probably still mostly going to block. Calcaterra was out this week, but I think it was a concussion, so he should be back next week. Then you'll see some Alberto. It's possible they use him in the when they need a receiver.
He hasn't really done anything since he arrived there. I remember how hot and bothered everyone was last offseason about him in Denver.
He's been a weekly inactive this year. I assume learned the offense by this time. But yeah, he was active this week with Calcaterra out, but he's going to be active going forward as long as Goddard's out. We'll see. It's possible he gets out there on some passing downs. He's not much of a blocker, but he can stretch the field. He's fast in a straight line. We know that.
Yeah, and with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, you don't really need a ton of work from your tight end. And I mean, you got Julio Jones now too. I mean, they've got plenty of capable pass catchers. So
yeah, it'll just be a more narrow target tree. Same thing last year. When Goddard got hurt last year, they just narrowed the passing tree down, and we saw a lot of Devonta Smith. We already are seeing a lot of A.J. Brown. I don't know how much more A.J. Brown can do.
Right.
But yeah, you'll probably see some more snaps with Julio Jones. They probably won't run as many 2 tight end sets. You'll probably see more 3 wide stuff, but we'll see.
Yep. All right, so I mentioned it at the top of the show, but I'll recap now. Our weekly median score this week was a 179.63.
It's awful.
Yeah, so again, the lowest we've had in the league this season. I could have gone back and checked our medians from last year, but I chose not to. So our highest score this week was a 220.42 for Mel, who beat out everyone else in the league, but didn't need to because he played Georgia Mike, who put up 65.
Wasted points on a bye week.
Good for Mel. Getting those points tiebreakers, though. He's moved into a tie for first place in terms of record with JMC and Judd.
Yeah,
so we've got a 3-way tie at the top.
What an incredible run he's been on. Is that 12,
yeah,
12 straight wins or something for him?
I don't know exactly what it is, but it is a lot.
Unstoppable.
No, his team has just shot up the rankings every week.
And we knew it coming into the offseason. I said that he was one of the favorites, I thought. His team was deep. It was balanced. It was loaded with talent, on high-end talent. You know, he got off to a slow start, but
yeah, just a little bit of bad luck at the beginning, balanced out by good luck now. His team had the number 1 scoring running back on the week. Rashad White put up 30 points for him on the strength of 20 carries, 2 touchdowns. A nice day for Rashad White.
Still ugly efficiency for Rashad White.
But not good efficiency.
But
20 carries, 73 yards. No,
he's getting the volume, and he's propped up by the receiving production.
Yep.
So it's
4 catches, 46 yards. Solid.
It's been a good fantasy season, even though the efficiency numbers are ugly to look at. But he's still a lot better than the backups. I think his backup are combining to average under 1 yard per carry. So
that whole Tampa team is just bizarre to me.
They couldn't run the ball last year, and they can't run it this year.
Other big performers on Mel's team, Josh Allen with his standard 26-point day. Deontay Johnson taking over that number 1 wide receiver role in Pittsburgh now that he's healthy again, 25 points. A.J. Brown, only 66 yards, but had the touchdown. Solid days at tight end from Conklin and Pitts. 4 catches, 56 yards for Kyle Pitts. I'll take it.
Yeah, but he wasn't getting goal line carries like Jonnu Smith. So,
oh my God. Honestly, Arthur Smith is my hero.
Who loves Arthur Smith more than fantasy managers?
Oh my goodness. It's just incredible what he's doing. This is the highest level of performance art I have ever seen on a football field is what Arthur Smith is doing.
He's definitely doing it on purpose at this point.
Oh my, he's absolutely
leaning in all the way.
He is, and it's incredible.
Did you see his quotes defending taking Bijan out when they get close to the goal line? He's like, no, we don't give Bijan the ball. We can't let Bijan score touchdowns. He's in there to distract all of the other players.
He was like, well, he opens things up for other people. Yep. I use top 10 picks on players to open things up for other people. That's exactly what I
got to make sure Jonnu Smith gets goal line carries. Forget about Bijan Robinson.
This is incredible. This is phenomenal work by Arthur Smith. When he is inevitably fired because of this, I am going to be so sad. Also worth noting in Mel's lineup, he had the Pop Douglas and Mac Jones stack, just like everyone expected. No? Come on. I was excited for that one.
Nothing good can come from that.
No, nothing. Anyway, other side of things, pretty standard week for Georgia Mike. Not a lot of points anywhere. Tyler Huntley got some garbage time work because Baltimore was up by 87 points. Pittman had a decent week. Let's move on.
Nothing to see here. He continues his march towards the inevitable 101.
All right, our second highest score of the week was Mr. Good News with a 214.32, beating Judd's team. Judd put up a 198.96. So both of these teams over the median by a good margin. So Judd gets the 1-1. Mr. Good News gets the 2-0.
Yeah, tough break for Judd. Just tough matchups.
Yeah.
At least we have the median because he had one of the highest scores. He just happened to face someone who had an even higher score.
Yeah, we've seen a couple of these in recent weeks where we had multiple teams over the median, and it's always tough when you put up a good week. But that's the nice thing about that median game is you don't feel as bad as you do when you just put up the second highest score and take a loss.
Yeah, we're going to see this a lot because there's 8 really good teams and 4 really bad teams. So some of these 8 good teams are going to play each other, and they're all going to put up points.
How dare you call my team bad? Mr. Good News had Dalton Schultz with a 37.5 highest scoring tight end of the week. What a game for basically everyone in Houston. Mentioned it before, CJ Stroud was the number 1 quarterback on the week. Absolute monster of a game for the entire pass catching group there.
Yeah, when you throw for 500 yards
and 5 touchdowns,
you're going to have productive pass catchers all around.
Yep. And as you're well aware, since you faced Schultz in redraft this week,
it was Larry Donnell all over again.
I think Schultz has had a little bit more of an illustrious career than Larry did.
I'm pretty sure that was the best game of Schultz's career.
Still, I'm pretty sure that was the only good game of Larry Donnell's career.
That's probably fair.
No, it's not probably fair. Absolutely. We discussed this on I think our first or second episode in the off season.
That's only because you never played him against me again. I'm pretty sure that's it. You probably ruined his career. You should have rostered him every year. Pick him up right now. We're playing this week in this league. Pick him up. I'm sure he's available.
If I can find him in the player pool, I absolutely will pick him up. I've got roster spots to burn right now. The psychological advantage. But anyway, back to this matchup. Immediate returns for Mr. Good News. Taylor Heineke, his highest scoring quarterback at 15.47. Not a great week, but 15's better than a 0. Solid running back games from Jacobs, Eckler. The rest of his lineup outside of Schultz really just solid, nothing spectacular. And looking over at Judd's side, it was just good, solid performances all the way across. No real boom weeks outside of his 2 tight end positions. Cade Otton with a 28.5 and Taysom Hill with a 25.62. So 2 big games out of his tight ends, but the rest of his roster was just sort of okay.
Yeah, tight ends were not expected to be the strength of his team, but they got him over the median this week.
Solid week for Judd. Solid week for Mr. Good News. Not a whole heck of a lot else to say here. Our third highest scoring team of the week was your team with a 200.37. You beat out Big, who had a 188.02. So it's another one. 2 teams over that median score.
Yeah, take that, you tea drinker.
You got that out of your system. We're good to move on.
I had to.
Good. So the story for your team had the highest scoring wide receiver of the week, CeeDee Lamb. 34-point game, just a monster performance for CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott against the Eagles there.
Yeah, the story of my team was tight ends. I had a lot of tight end points. Cole Kmet had 29 points. Mark Andrews had 24. David Njoku had 15. Irv Smith had 14. I got all kinds of tight end points this week, and I needed them because I had a lot of players on bye. I had a really thin roster this week, but my tight ends came through. This is why I roster 600 tight ends, because if they get in the end zone, even if it's an ugly week, like Njoku and Irv Smith combined for 50 yards, but they both got touchdowns, so that's 14 points.
That's why you keep them around, I guess. If you have the depth like that, it pays dividends at strange times.
It doesn't take much to get in your lineup as a tight end.
It doesn't take much to get in your lineup as a running back either. You had Deonta Foreman at 8.8 and Ezekiel Elliott at 6.95. You need to work on that running back room.
We don't need to talk about my running backs. Let's move on. Good thing I traded for Foreman and Elliott. Where would I be without them?
Jeez.
These zeros this week.
Such words have never been spoken in the year 2023. Josh Dobbs, 25 points. Coming in relief.
Off the bench.
I mentioned it last week, he's got another starting quarterback now. He was going to lose Dobbs when Murray came back, but now he's got Dobbs, Murray, and Baker still. And Levis, because he brought him off the practice squad. So
he's suddenly flush with quarterbacks again.
Solid week from Dobbs, Dell. Antonio Gibson continues to put up points, even if they're not big scores. He's been pretty consistent.
Yeah, the Commanders have had to throw a lot. He plays on passing downs and hurry up. It seems like the Commanders are always in hurry up mode.
They're probably going to have to throw more. Yeah.
Pretty much every game, all game long. That's all they've been doing. So that's good for him.
So a down week for Trey McBride coming off the big game last week, but I think that was mostly related to the fact that they started Clayton Tune and put up less than 60 total yards against the Cleveland Browns.
That might have been the worst offensive performance I have ever seen. And I've seen a lot of football in my life. That was pathetic. I don't think Clayton Tune is going to get another chance to start, maybe ever, after that game.
Do you remember Nathan Peterman's first start?
I do. I remember Nathan Peterman. I've seen a lot of bad starts. Mike Glennon, mostly guys that played for the Giants.
Excuse me. That was unnecessary. Don't worry. Tommy DeVito's here to shut you up.
Tommy DeVito.
Oh, God.
He was better this week.
I would like to opt out of this season.
DeVito was better this week when they went into prevent in the second quarter.
Better this week. He wasn't going to get any worse.
He threw 2 interceptions on his first 3 passes. So it looked like it was going to be much worse. And then they said, we don't have to try anymore. We're going to go in prevent for the final 3 quarters of the game.
I would like to opt out of this season. Oh my goodness! All right, so solid week for Big there. Some decent scores, no big boom scores outside of Dobbs and Dell. So our next highest scoring team was Flea, who put up a 180.55, beating out Criddle, who put up a 172.38. So Flea just sneaking over that median score there. Had big games from Dak Prescott, TJ Hawkinson, 7 catches, 21 points. Derek Carr with an 18. Jonathan Taylor, I guess, welcome back to the premier role.
Yep, finally took over the full-time role and relegated Zach Moss back to being a change of pace. They've been pretty much splitting carries all season. They were easing him in. Looks like that's about done now.
Didn't do a lot with his 18 carries, only 47 yards. 5 catches and got a touchdown through the air, so gets him up to 18.65. Solid week.
It's good enough to squeeze out a win this week.
Yep.
Every win matters right now. This playoff race is as tight as it can possibly be.
Flea seeing immediate returns on the trade she made with you, Jaylen Warren, in her lineup with a 15.55. If she doesn't have Warren in that spot, she drops way down at running back to a 7.55 from Jeff Wilson. She loses 8 points there, which she'd have won still, but she'd have won by less than a quarter of a point.
Oh, yeah, it would have been a lot closer. Trust me, I felt the loss of Jaylen Warren as well. He outscored my running backs combined. So
good for her for getting that trade done right in time to get that extra win this week, because
that's why you've
always mentioned how close those standings are.
Yeah, that's why you always continue to add depth if you can. Depth plays in this league.
It does. On the other side of things, CJ Stroud, 470 yards, 5 touchdowns, a 2-point conversion. Just what a week.
Don't forget about Bones. Got in the end zone again.
I was expecting you to say something more about CJ Stroud, but yes, this is true. Bones.
No, we need to talk about.
I can't believe we're doing this. Bones.
Kenny
with a touchdown.
Bones Gainwell.
Oh, we're inserting it into the middle now. I thought we were just doing like Bones Gainwell or just Bones. Like I thought this was a McCoy situation.
Yeah, we can just call him Bones. Everyone knows who Bones is.
I suppose. Do they?
They will.
The
after
only people
this.
who know this are in Criddle's home leagues.
Listen, you know what kind of reach we have on this podcast? Everyone's going to know.
Yes, I know what kind of reach. That's why I mean no one knows.
No, unfortunately, it's been a very reduced role this year for Kenny Gainwell, but he still pops off for scores now and then. He needed it this week. He had Christian McCaffrey and Dave Montgomery injured and on bye. So he needed some kind of running back production.
I still don't exactly know where Criddle is. I mean, obviously at this point, the playoffs are out of reach just based on record, but he's still trying to kind of play spoiler a little bit. He hasn't been trying to shed points or anything like that. He's not trying to compete for one of those bottom 3 picks.
He said as much when he made the deal with me to pick up the extra draft picks. He wasn't throwing the towel in the season. He was still going to fight to the end.
Yeah.
His team has some good players. I mean, we've seen big time spike weeks. CJ Stroud, 44 points this week. Will keep you in matchups single-handedly. He just doesn't have the depth. He just needs more players.
Yeah,
and now Dallas Goedert being out is going to hurt him a lot. Having Kittle and Goddard was impactful for his lineup. So losing Goddard is going to hurt. He can't really afford to lose any productive players. Having Montgomery out for a few weeks is hurt. But he's not as far away as the other tanking teams. So
certainly not.
He's got enough pieces where if he is productive with his draft picks and adding talent, either by rookie or trading them for veteran players, where he could be a competitor next year, especially if CJ Stroud is going to be the number 1 quarterback.
Yeah, right. And his other quarterback, his super flex, was Jalen Hurts, who had 26 points as well. Certainly
right.
no slouch there.
That's a pretty good super flex when you got Jalen Hurts as your QB2.
Yeah. Not that he had a great week or anything, but Sam Howell had a 17.45 on his bench. Like, he's got solid production at the quarterback position.
Yeah, Sam Howell would have been quarterback 1 on a lot of these rosters this week. We've seen some ugly quarterback scores.
That's true. Our next highest scoring matchup was JMC with a 178.7, beating out my team with a 149.45. So JMC just misses out on that median score. He goes 1-1 on the week. Kind of a rough week for JMC. Obviously, he lost Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones went 4 of 9 for 25 yards and put up 0.90 points and ended up as JMC's starting quarterback because his only other healthy quarterback, Brock Purdy, was on bye this week. So a tough week there for his quarterback position, but he had some good scores elsewhere. Amari Cooper with the 27.65, T. Higgins with the 24, Jonnu Smith with the 25, and decent production across the rest of his lineup. The only thing is at the very end of things, it kind of faded away with DJ Moore, Kelsey, and Abdullah in his lineup, scoring 7, 6, and 5 points respectively.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing that we've been saying all year. He's got the highest of highs on his roster, guys like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey that are week-winning players on their own.
Jonnu Smith
as well. He just doesn't have the depth. And like we said earlier, this Daniel Jones injury just impacts that even more. I mean, you can see some of the guys that got in his lineup. You mentioned the names. It's not pretty.
No.
The production isn't great. Down another starter, another regular weekly starter. It's just going to get harder and harder every week. And there is no margin of error in this playoff race right now. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what kind of moves he's got up his sleeves here.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to keep an eye on. Again, I still like the bones of this team. I know it's easy for me to say as an outsider, but I might just burn the future picks and buy back in.
He did win the championship last year, and he has most of those players still here.
That's
obviously a good
kind of what I'm
roster.
saying. Like, I don't know.
It's obviously a good roster. I understand the push, try to win back to back. He's got a good team.
All right, so we'll see what he does. Over on the other side of this matchup, I put up a 149.
Shocking.
Basically on the strength of Noah Brown and Jake Ferguson both having 30-point days. If Mel had traded for Noah Brown a little bit earlier, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now. But this is actually a somewhat close matchup.
Shocking.
I managed to get a 0 in at my second running back spot and a 0.2 in at my RB1.
That one carry at the end of the game for Deion Jackson.
Yep.
That was your entire week's running back production.
Yep. 1 carry, 2 yards.
1 carry in the last play of a blowout.
Not really much to discuss on my side of things. Down week from Patrick Mahomes. I don't know. We don't need to talk about my team.
Let's move on.
Our final matchup features Flinch with a 173.69, beating out Benign Rug with an 88.57. Flinch gets a win despite being below the median, keeps him at least alive in the playoff race despite losing some ground.
Yeah, he's kind of on the outside looking in now. Everyone else has moved slightly ahead of him. It's still a very tight race. With the 2 potential wins per week, he's really only 1 week out of being back into the playoff race. There's 8 very good teams that are fighting for 6 spots. Every week matters. Thankfully, he had kind of a bye week this week playing Benign Rug's team, who is not trying to score any points.
Yeah.
So he locked himself in at least 1 win this week, no matter what happened.
Yeah, unfortunately, unable to secure that other one, but it was kind of a disappointing week for some of his big names. Lamar Jackson basically didn't have to throw the ball or run the ball at all because Seattle was putting up absolutely no resistance to anything that Baltimore wanted to do.
Well, yeah, the Ravens ran for 300 yards. So no need to air it out when you're running for 300 yards.
Yeah. Just low-ish scores from most of his team. Dalton Kincaid continues to pay dividends, though. That first-round pick that he spent there is looking better by the week.
Yeah, with Knox out, he's become a every-down player. They haven't forced him into that secondary role and put more Quentin Morris on the field. They've just put Shakir out there and run 3 wide and used him as the only tight end and played him every down. And he's been very productive. This is what they were expecting when they drafted him in the first round and what Flinch was expecting when he took him 104.
I just looked at Ramondre Stevenson's line for the first time. 9 carries, 87 yards, and a touchdown.
Yeah, I think 65 of those were on 1 play.
I didn't watch any of that game. I had no interest in New England, Washington.
I believe he had a 65-yard touchdown run.
That would explain it.
That was it.
That would explain it. Anyway, hopefully brighter days ahead for Flinch's team, and he can get back into the mix in the playoff race. And Ruggs basically locked up the 102 at this point. I don't know if he has any chance of catching Georgia Mike, but I know I don't have any chance of catching him now. So things are kind of solidifying at the bottom as well as at the top.
You have a better shot of catching him at 102 than he does of catching Georgia Mike at 101. No one's catching Georgia Mike at 101. He has a several 100-point disadvantage.
However you look at it. I guess it's an advantage.
In the points scored department, no one's catching him at 101.
Let's move on to America's favorite segment, our Dynasty Daddy Fantasy Football Playoff Calculator. Let's check these percentage odds to make the playoffs. We have a new leader in the clubhouse. Mel Crisp, number 1, 94% chance to make the playoffs.
Yeah, for the first time in basically the entire time we've been reviewing this, JMC is not the number 1 spot.
Yeah. I think he and Judd flip-flopped a couple of times, but...
That's fair, but they were probably like 99 and 98%. It wasn't.
This is the first time we've seen someone other than those 2 at the top. So our top 5 as it stands right now, we've got Mel at 94, Flea at 89, JMC at 88, Judd at 83, Mr. Good News at 82. Every team from Mel all the way down to Flinch, who is currently in 8th place, is within 3 games of each other. Every team outside of Flinch is within 1 game of each other, either 13-5 or 12-6. The top of our league has just clumped together. No one can gain a significant advantage in terms of record. The only stratification is coming in those points tiebreakers.
Right. It's an 8-man race for the 6 playoff spots. All of these teams are legitimate contenders, at least in my eyes, record-wise and points-wise. It's very, very tight. There's been no separation so far. There's not many weeks left in the regular season either. So we'll see if we get a little bit of separation finally. But as of right now, there's 8 legit teams that could all win the title this year. And 2 of them are going to be very disappointed because they're going to be in the toilet bowl instead.
It's crazy how close this is 9 weeks into the season. You expect this, at the very beginning, but not this deep into the year. And I didn't mention your playoff odds are 77, Bigs are at 61, Flinch is at 27. The bottom 4 teams, less than 1% chance. We don't need to cover them. Absolutely crazy how close it is still.
Yeah, and we've seen big swings in this make playoff percentage chance on a week-to-week basis, and I think we're going to continue to see that based on how close everyone is clumped together.
Yeah.
You could legitimately go from first place playoff bye, locked up number 1 seed, to out of the playoff race in 1 week right now. That's how close this race is. And the points tiebreakers, I mean, it's very close as well. The point distribution, there's not a huge difference between the top and the bottom teams in this grouping. There's going to be some disappointed teams when the playoffs start.
You have to wonder if every other year in our league we've seen, once the playoffs start and once we get a little bit into the playoffs, those playoff teams try to buy up last minute pieces. I don't know how much capital there's going to be left on a lot of these teams to buy up those pieces.
Yeah, pretty much everyone in this top 8 has sold all of their 24 picks and a lot of 25 picks as well.
Yeah.
Seems to be digging deep to try to add more pieces for the playoff run. That's one of the reasons why I added a few extra picks this week in that trade with Flea, just to have a little something in reserve, because if I'm one of the 6 playoff teams, that means there's 2 of these other 7 teams that didn't make the playoffs and have lots of good pieces, win now pieces. They'll probably be looking to sell once the playoffs start.
It's a smart hedge for your team right there. That brings us to the end of things. Unfortunately, we have no manager interview this week. We have a few people on the schedule for the next couple of weeks, so we'll have some more interviews down the line. Everybody enjoy your week. We'll see you next time.
Arrivederci.
That's funny.